anyone who is going to tell you that publicity on its own is going to yield an ROI, run.
Okay, welcome back to the Life and Business Hack Show. I'm your host, the real Stephen Corcoran, and man, I'm excited to get this lady on. I've tracked her down to come on this show and share her brilliance with you guys. This lady, I've met her actually in Calgary. Actually, it was the first time we met. And this lady is a genius when it comes to PR, publications, getting on magazines and everything. And when it comes to that fun stuff, and she's going to bring it all for you guys here, and I'm super excited. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to PollyAnne.
Hey everybody, I'm super excited to be here, and I'm excited for all the amazing questions that you're going to ask me for your people.
Oh, I got some doozy ones for you because we're going to get into the nitty gritty here. But before we dive in, kind of give a background just so people kind of know a little bit more about PollyAnna Brown.
Absolutely. So publicity is this kind of amorphous thing that people don't really know what goes into it. You hear publicity and you think red carpets, magazines, all these different things. And for me, it's so much more simple than that. And so when I got into publicity, it was by pure accident. I had wanted to write for quite a while, and someone had convinced me that that probably wasn't the best idea. And I was like, oh, but I want to. And they were like, oh, but you shouldn't. I was like, okay, good. So I ended up getting a master's degree in psychology. And my professors kept coming to me and they were like, hey, your papers are really good. You should think about publishing them as articles. And I was like, okay, that sounds amazing. So what I did is I was automatically thinking magazine articles. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll find some places that this could fit in, no problem. And at the time I was studying consciousness, this super funny aspect of it. And so I had written this article about binaural beats and meditation and all these kinds of things. And I was like, okay, where can I put it? So I started sending out pitches to all of these magazines, and I was published on 4 continents within a couple months. It was shocking. And this was back in 2012. And it was funny because at the time I did not know that my professor was talking about academic journals, right? So she was talking about publishing in that way, and I didn't know, but it aligned so much with what I originally wanted to do and was curious about that it automatically clicked. And at the time, I didn't know that that was supposed to be hard to do. All I knew was someone said I was good at it. I believed in it. I wanted to get it out there. And so I went and did it. And I had already had a lot of entertainment experience. I grew up in entertainment. I was always acting, singing, on stage, in front of the camera, all of that good stuff. So I had a lot of the storytelling chops already going on. And so when I reached out, I knew where to place the stories, how to place the stories, how to make it interesting. And I just asked silly questions. I was like, well, they need content. I've got content. So I might as well just ask, like, hey, do you want my stuff?
Basically how you started a business.
Exactly. And it worked out really, really well. And so it just kind of blossomed from there. So I started doing more articles, getting columns in different places, both online and in print, which was really cool. Being in an international glossy magazine within the first couple months of professionally writing and getting a paycheck for it, I was like, hey, I can get used to this. And so that was really awesome. And so when I started my business, I started just teaching people how to tell their story and how to tell other stories really well. So I was like, you know, when you think about your content, think about all the different stories that you can tell and, you know, bringing people in and making it, you know, really intriguing and getting their senses going. And then people started asking me about publications. And I was like, oh yeah, you just do this and this and this. And, you know, kind of I didn't send them on their way. They were my clients, but they were like, I don't know how to do this. Tell me about it. And so I would tell them, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then I realized, oh my goodness, this is like a whole service thing, right?
There's a lot that goes into it.
There's so much that goes into it. And so I was already answering the questions, and they were like, can you just do it for me? And I was like, well, yeah, of course I can. And so that's how it was really birthed. It was this interesting series of oopses that worked out in my favor.
It kind of like the stars kind of aligned there for you. It's kind of one question I'd have for you. And obviously I kind of know the answer. We're kind of polar opposites, because I suck at writing completely. I cannot do it for the life of me. Ask all my English teachers. I guarantee your English teachers loved you. Am I right?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Like PollyAnne, she was awesome, and she's an amazing writer. So I want to pump up PollyAnne a little bit here. She didn't share it, but she has been doing amazing results for her clients here. Just to give you a perspective, some of the outlets, she's done over 50 outlets at this point in different publications. Also looking at like the returns on publications, because like most people don't realize, they're like, oh, I get in a magazine. How do I utilize that? How do I put in a strategy that it generates money? You've mastered that. Like, what are some of the ROIs that like your clients are getting? Like you've told me, but let's tell the audience just so they can be
Absolutely.
Like, screenshot.
Absolutely. So with publicity, it's really interesting because we have to combine it with an overall business strategy, right? So anyone who is going to tell you that publicity on its own is going to yield an ROI, run, because we can't track it, right? It's not that simple. So it works in an overall strategy that works with your ideal clients, your business, your goals, all the things that you want to put together. And so when we put all of those things together, we're seeing ROIs of anywhere between 300% over 3,000%, which is shocking, right? And that's better than a lot of ads that you'll get back. So there's a lot that goes into that, and publicity is one great way to get solid content in front of fresh ideal clients who are already on the outlets that are hungry and asking the questions that you're ready to answer. So it's a really great mesh and hybrid.
Okay, I got to dive into some brilliance that was just dropped there for the audience here. Just so you guys know that I always believe in bringing on experts. You guys always know that I'm not the smartest at everything. I turned to PollyAnne. We actually did a coaching session, which blew my mind completely. So I tapped into her. She is the expert on this. She's been doing this for I don't even know how many years. She's super young, by the way. How many years have you been doing this? Since you were probably a kid, I would say. Like right out of university.
Yeah, it's publicity specific. It's been eight years now. Yeah, I'm doing the math in my head. I'm not the best at that. But
I'm good at that. I'm good at math. I could tell you I'm good with numbers. We're a good combo here.
Yes, 8 years publicity specific. And I've been doing storytelling since I can remember. So it's been a long time.
The art. So just to tie into it, because I did want to talk about what you talked about there, because one massive thing that you guys got to understand in the audience is the ability of storytelling. Storytelling is probably the most underrated skill that you need to learn to make yourself interesting to anybody you're talking to. Another really powerful thing that PollyAnne said was definitely measuring it. Like just because you get an ad in a magazine or on radio or some other publication does not mean that turns into dollar signs, guys. You need to have a strategy. You need to have something behind the scenes. A good example is, I have a good question for you here. I've heard from other people, there's nothing, what is it? There's no bad publicity. It's only good publicity. Is that a thing? I'm kind of against it. If it's bad, you don't want more people hearing about it, obviously.
It's the reason why that's said is because it sets you up for a comeback. Comebacks work if you have the clout to come back.
Yeah.
So if you get killed before you get started, then you're done, right? And that just doesn't work. But there's not anyone that I can think of that doesn't love a good redemption story. So that works for people who they have a connection with their audience and they made a mistake, right? And sometimes that mistake is intentional, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's really, really big, sometimes it's blown out of proportion. Each individual thing is very different. And what publicity does in that particular aspect is it allows you to see the cracks in someone. And if you have a firm foundation of who this person is and you see the crack, you see the humanity, yeah, you can be pissed at them for a while, but just like any relationship that you have, you can forgive someone when they show growth. You can forgive someone when they make an honest effort and actually change. And that's the thing that publicity offers, but it's not as simple as there's no such thing as bad publicity. However, that being said, if you do it the right way, it'll do things. So I'll give you a good example of bad publicity done right.
Okay, I was just going to ask that. So you're kind of diving into it.
So do you remember when Kim Kardashian launched Skims a few years ago? It's her shapewear line. You may not know because you're a chick. So, right? You're a dude, so you might not know this. So shapewear, for anyone who's listening who has no idea what it is, essentially they're undergarments that make your clothes fit in the way that you want them to. So
I need that.
You might be familiar with Spanx.
Oh yeah,
Spanx is that's what they are. It's another term. Spanx is just a brand that has mastered it. Category king. Very well done. So right before Skims came out, they had two major publicity stunts that some of them weren't intentional, but they were able to spin the bad publicity into good publicity. So what happened was it was originally called kimono. And so there was a huge outrage when it was announced because of cultural appropriation, all of those kinds of things. And it was something that they just creatively didn't really think about. They didn't think through it. And had Kim Kardashian been of Japanese heritage, wouldn't have been a big deal, but she's not. So hence and therefore, big issue, right? And so what she decided to do is she pulled everything, which was huge. They had to change all of the labels, all of the marketing, all of the everything. And she came up with Skims. Now, Skims is a brilliant name, right? Because for a woman who wants to change the way she looks in her clothes, on average, that is, I want to be a little slimmer in my clothes. I don't want my bumps to show through, right? Hide some of those imperfections that, we won't get into that.
Yeah, but, I don't believe
it. Me neither. However, it was brilliant for her target market. So on top of that, shortly thereafter, if I have my timeline right, she went to this gala where she was in this gold dress and her waist was itty bitty. They had her in a super tight corset and everyone was talking about it for about the next 3 to 5 days in the media because they were like, that's impossible. How do you do that? What message is that sending? And then she launches Skims, which is perfect. It's brilliant branding. So if you think about it, she had the negative publicity. People were definitely saying negative things about her, right? They were not happy with her at all, but she risked millions of dollars in product to redo it, which is that change that we're talking about. Is that, hey, you know what? I messed up and I want to show you that I'm genuine in my apology. So I'm willing to change this entire business and take a huge loss. And I might lose it in order to fix this. That's a big deal.
Well, it comes down to the ethical thing that kind of stands in there. And that's why I love that story. I've never actually heard that story till you just said it, because you're an amazing storyteller as well. It's accepting that you're wrong, accepting when you do something wrong. Just to give you an example, maybe you're working with a client and there was miscommunications on some way. Rectifying, be like, hey, somewhere this fell flat. If I fell flat, I want to rectify this and make sure this is good. And usually you can restore that relationship and get back onto doing regular business. It's just figuring out, accepting. I think that's a big thing, is like a lot of people put their egos there and they're like, no, like I won't like accept that I did something wrong. And that's a really good tidbit. Like if you guys are watching this, take that one away, be humble and be okay with messing up, because we're all going to mess up eventually. Like we're going to take a wrong turn eventually sometimes, but it's how quick can we get back on the right path? And that's huge as well. So that's a really amazing story. So I love that. That was great.
Thank you.
I have a super interesting question for you here that I think is going to put you on the spot. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So a lot of listeners are listening to this. They clicked on it because they're interested in publications and doing that for themselves. Like, as somebody who I've done a little bit, basically like none, for my clients as well. But you've done it at a high level. What would you tell somebody who's just starting off, who has no idea what to do, and they're just like, I want to be on Forbes. And you're just like, okay, you want to be on Forbes, but you have 0 publications. What would be the first thing you tell that person?
I would tell that person, we have to talk about a few things. So
I'd be like, pump the brakes, bro.
Yes, let's sit down and talk about this for a hot second. It's interesting because there are so many different ways and avenues, right? And there are people, I am never going to say that it's impossible, right? Because I've definitely met people that their very first publication was Forbes. And I was like, did you do that? Right? And
I think you're allowed swearing on this show. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah.
PG-13.
Yeah. So, it's not the norm. It's absolutely not the norm. And the first thing that I would tell anybody who is considering publicity, who wants to be in publications, whether you want to be featured or you want to write, whatever it is to first get clear on the value that you're bringing. Because one of the things that people start thinking about when they think about publicity is, what can this publicity do for me? And it's a backwards way of thinking about it. Yeah. And we see this a lot in business too, right? In the beginning, what can my business do for me? Hold up. None of that goes.
Could you do that one more time? What was that?
I don't think I can, but so you want to reel that back in and say, hold up, right? Because this publication has this massive list of people that they go out to. Most of these have millions of regular readers that are going through and they're dedicated to the publication. You don't want to assume that they're ready and willing to serve you, right? Because the whole reason they have the publication and the dedicated readers are because they put in the effort for the value to be there. And so in order to establish a relationship, you have to provide value. And if you don't have that value, you can't establish a relationship, because a relationship is built on that give and take. So if you go into any relationship with the idea of what can I get before what am I offering, what am I bringing, it creates a power imbalance and it doesn't work and it doesn't feel good. And you're just going to get a lot of no's. So you want to take that first step and say, what am I bringing to the table? So what kind of eyeballs am I bringing? What does my audience look like? What am I willing to do? So for a lot of publications, you know, like I talked about when I first started writing, I was getting paid to write some of the time, not all the time. And before I asked for payment, I would write for people for free and say, hey, I want you to see my work product. I want you to see that I can write for your audience. And I didn't even bring up getting a paycheck. So it was my way of saying, hey, here you go. Now, on average, when that happened, they wrote back to me and they were like, hey, where do we send your check? Which was nice, but that wasn't my intention.
No.
Right?
The intention was genuine.
Absolutely. And so, and at the time I had 0 audience. I had no business, no audience. I was writing because I wanted to get this information out there. And that in and of itself is where you should be, right? I have this knowledge of something that is going to change someone's life. Hence, and therefore, I should put it on the outlets that are going to give it the push that it needs so that those lives are changed, right? The glory, the ego, all of that, it's nice, but that's not what you lead with. It's not the intention behind it. It's okay to get giddy and excited, and we all do. Every time I get something published, whether it's for a client or for myself, I still happy dance, right? Totally fine. But the intention is different. The intention is always to serve first. So once you have that and you understand that, you want to look at smaller publications where you can go prove yourself,
Exactly.
right? So think about, and it depends on what kind of publicity you want. I personally specialize in contributorship and writing. My first love, it's all that I love to do. So I focus there. But if you don't write, if you like to speak and you are someone that, you know, if I was like, hey, go write an article, you'd go into an anxiety attack and, you know, get underneath the blankets and hide for a week. Don't do that. Don't torture yourself. But look at podcasts that have smaller followings. I can't tell you how often I run into people who haven't done anything yet. They're brilliant at what they do. Let me be clear about that. Brilliant at what they do. But they want to turn down an offer to be on a podcast because the podcast doesn't have the amount of downloads that they want. I'm sorry about you, bud. No. So
I was gonna step into that one too. To weigh in. When somebody asks you to be on their podcast, even if they don't have as many listeners or doesn't have as many downloads, you should at least accept that just for the person who's reaching out to you. You obviously have a relationship with that person. So if you can help that person in any way, shape, or form, it's taking a little bit of your time, but just think of how much you're helping them and helping their small audience as well. So come from a place of service. Same as PollyAnne, trying to get her on this. She was just like, I'm in. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. I know she's incredibly busy. So I was just super thankful. I was like, well, thank you for blessing my audience with your knowledge. And as you guys can see, she is blowing it up right now. She is telling you exactly what you need to be doing. It's okay to reach for the stars. Doesn't mean you're always going to get it. But like she said before, like look at smaller publications, get your foot wet, start understanding what the industry it takes. Because another thing that I didn't know this till I talked to you is there's actually 4 different ways to be publicized or like get into publications. Do you mind, don't get into too deep into it or anything, like just higher level, what those 4 things are for the audience to know.
Absolutely. So you can do contributorship, which is writing for publications. You can do podcasts, you can do TV, and you can do speaking engagements. Those are the main 4 ways of getting your message out there, getting your voice out there.
Okay. And then out of the 4 ways, which one do you think would be the best for me?
You already know what I think. So I'm going to tell everyone else. For you, I go for contributorship because it is hands down the most ROI rich of all the methods. It has the most long-term gains with short-term wins, which is, I mean, I think what everyone wants, right? And so it has this ability to set you up as the person to go to. And for you in particular, or even, you know, anyone who's listening, someone like you who has that immense knowledge, you've got the experience, you have an amazing foundational audience, there's no reason to not. That's where you really thrive. So that's what I would suggest.
I know. And we've already had a conversation about this. And I have homework that I've still, like, I put into practice. I did some research, but then I didn't take action yet. So I am going to take action. Don't worry. I'm going to follow through. There's just a lot of stuff that's going on, which is awesome. One of my things that I want to let the audience know, because right now they heard about publications. They kind of know, like, okay, how do I get started? We're going to dive a little bit of your guys' next step a little later. But why would somebody want to get publicized? Like, what would that do for their personal brand or their business? Like, how do they leverage it? Let's say if they did get on Forbes magazine, what do they do with that? They're like, this is awesome. I did it. I finally did it. And then do they just sit on it? What do they do?
No, don't sit on it. Here's what you do. So you want to come at it from several different vantage points, right? So think about it almost like you're a commander in an army, right? And you have the enemy kind of flowing in. You don't want to sit at one spot and attack from one spot, right? Yeah. You want to kind of surround them as best you can, because then you have the upper hand. So it's very similar, just in a non-violent way. So if you think about it like, okay, I got featured in Forbes, whether that's I got an article published or I did an interview, Awesome. Fantastic. So what you want to do with that is you want to send it out to your audience, and you want to send it out a few ways. So social media is always going to be huge. If you send it out in social media, you best, please, please, please tag the publication, tag the editor who published you or the writer who published you, who did the interview. Hands down, don't forget those steps, because it shows them, hey, look at what I'm doing. It develops that relationship, because a one-time feature or a one-time article isn't going to do anything, right? It's a flash in the pan. That's not what we want. No. So make sure you do those pieces. The next piece is send it out to your email list if you have one, right? And incentivize them to go there. So let's say you want to do a free 15-minute training for anyone who goes and visits. All they have to do is click the link, go there, take a screenshot, and you do a free 15-minute training for them. It's that simple, because what's going to happen is on the back end, they're going to see that your stuff gets views. And one, it's more likely to make it to the front page, which is invaluable. And the other thing is it makes you someone that they want to collaborate with in the future. Yes. So don't think in the moment, think future.
Think long term.
Beyond that, yes, exactly. There are two other ways to do it. I'm going to run through them very, very quickly. So the first one is put it into a funnel where it makes sense, where you want to get that social proof, right? So if you're in an indoctrination series, go ahead and put that in one of the first couple emails that people are most likely to open, right? Tell them the value, tell them what's in there, send them to it. If it's a video, embed the video, right? Yes. All those things. So that's really huge. The second thing is run cold traffic to it. So anytime you want to warm someone up for a launch you have coming up, or maybe there is an evergreen product that you have that you want to run specific traffic through, send them there first. Their first impression of you on Forbes is completely different than their first impression of you sitting on your couch on a video you made, right? And nothing's wrong with that. Yeah. Nothing's wrong with that, but it sets up a different expectation and a different energy that they associate with you. And so those are my top ways of using all of those things, but you can utilize them over and over and over again.
I gotta say, I'm gonna listen. Wow. Just wow. I'm gonna re-listen to that for myself personally, because the amount of different steps there, like you blew it out of the water. I knew this was gonna be an amazing episode with you. I was so excited. I know there's a lot more levels that go into publications and doing that for yourself. And I know the audience right now, they're probably psyched and they're like, man, I want to do this for myself. I see the ROIs. I see the reason why. I don't want to be that guy who's just on the couch. I want to have something behind me that gives me credibility. And I know you have a gift for my audience, which I'm super excited to share with everybody, that gets them going, that gets them on the right foot. Because you can go on the bad foot, or you can make sure you're going on the right foot and learning from somebody who has done it again and again and again in a proven system. So I've twisted her arm to get this gift. So why don't you share a little bit about what this gift is and how you were so generous to give it to us.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. So what it is the ultimate publicity toolkit, and you can get it at publicitychecklist.com. And what it is it's going to take you through the 4 stages of publicity. So you know exactly what you need in place at each stage so that you can move along in a way that makes sense. And so it'll explain what's inside of each stage, what you should do to grow. And it gives you a very clear roadmap of exactly how to grow your publicity over time and continue to manage that for the long term.
So I'm just going to add this, guys. I'm opting into this right away as well because I need this. And I know you guys need this if you guys are listening to this. So I'm going to put that link in the description here. Also, I didn't tell PollyAnne this, but if you guys have any comments about PR or any questions like that, I'm going to forward it to PollyAnne to answer, because I'll be honest, I'm not the expert at it. PollyAnne is, and she'll get back to me eventually, or I'll just tell her that you guys made a comment on there, and hopefully with her gracious, hopefully if she's nice enough, she'll respond. Can you do that for us?
Absolutely. So if there are comments in the description, I will absolutely go through and respond to them. And the other thing that we can do if you want to, and I'm putting you on the spot, so sorry.
Oh, no. I've never done this.
right? So the other thing that we can also do is for your audience specifically is if there is enough interest and there's enough comments, we can do a free Q&A for them.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a YouTube live.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Okay, if we can get enough comments asking about this, plus if we can get, let's say, 50 likes. If we get 50 likes on this video, me and PollyAnne are going to do a Q&A publication for you guys. So this is for you guys. I'm excited for this. So let's see if we can get that 50, and then we'll jump on.
Perfect.
I've never had it twisted back on me, so that was cool. So before we wrap up here, PollyAnne, I know I'm very cautious about your time because it's very valuable. And I want to say I appreciate you jumping on. But before we stop, I got one question for you. And this whole show is geared upon like life and business hack show. And I love hearing different like life-changing hacks or tricks that you do either on a daily basis or a weekly basis that has got you to where you are today. What would be, if you can narrow it down to one, I know it's tough, narrow it down to one thing, what would that be that you would share with the audience?
I would say that the hack would be valuing relationships. And I have a systematic way that I've learned to do it. And so it started off with me just checking in regularly. I can't tell you how many editors over the years I've just said, hey, how you doing? And sometimes they're like, I'm busy, stop it, right? But a lot has gone into maintaining relationships. And so what I do is I actually have a spreadsheet of when I talk to people, what we talked about, some of the major things that are important to them. If they have kids and a spouse, I've got their names, I've got their birthdays, all those kinds of things. And sometimes they don't know I have it because it's on like their profile and I grabbed it from there. But I look at what's important to them and I make an effort to be invested in what's important to them. If I don't know anything about it, I'm going to go at least try to read about it and say, hey, what do you think of this? Because relationships are about growth and really showing up to be there for that person. And so if you're only ever talking to them about something that is interesting to you or valuable to you, that doesn't serve them. And so that would be the number one thing, whether it's publicity or anything else, really valuing and growing those relationships intentionally.
100%. Wow. That was a knowledge bomb. Just so you guys know, it's not creepy to keep tabs on everybody and having, I have the exact same thing. I have the exact same thing. And a lot of people that I know actually have that because it's hard to remember like small details. Just for example, like my business partner, Eric, he has a tab full about his fiance, like different things. They'll be walking through the grocery store and she'll be like, oh, I'd really like to try that dish with this. And he'll pick it up later on and she would be like, how'd you remember this? And he's just on his phone in the details. So it can make you look really good when you follow up the right way. So, and actually take interest. It shows you're taking interest in that individual. And I know that's really progressed you as well, because you're very personal. You're very good at connecting with people and coming from that place of sincerity. So I love that about you. That's why we connected right away here in Calgary, Alberta. Like warm hearts right away. We were attracted and we just hit it off right away. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming onto this show and sharing your knowledge, PollyAnne. You don't know how much I appreciate it. And I know this is going to help so many people. I know that that gift you're going to give to people is going to change a lot of people and going to get people on the right track. And I just want to say thank you for coming on. And I hope to see you soon. I hope we do the Q&A together.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I absolutely adore you. You know that. And I am so excited to just help and support your people, because anyone who is all in on you is someone who's really amazing. And I just have nothing but respect for.
Oh, that is incredibly nice. And you're always got the right words to say, I've found. So with that, we're going to call this a wrap, guys. Again, let's get a bunch of comments down below for the Q&A. And let's get those 50 thumbs up and we'll do a Q&A for you guys. So without further ado, thank you. And we're signing off from the Life and Business Hack Show. I'm your host, the real Stephen Corcoran. This is PollyAnne, and goodbye.